Hello, everybody. My name is Cayden, and I'll be your host tonight on the How to Be a Better DM podcast. Just a little about me. You may have heard me a few times on this podcast. I've, guest co-hosted a few times, and I've also guest starred occasionally. So I've been playing D&D for about 4 years and DMing for the last 2. For my day job, I sell real estate in the state of Utah, in the USA, where we're based out of. Some other hobbies of mine include playing guitar, singing, jiu-jitsu, backpacking, and rock climbing, among several other things. My interests are forever changing. So some of you may be thinking, this guy really hasn't been DMing that long at all. And obviously you'd be right. But the advantage I do have is one of being a fantasy nerd my entire life, like many of you. I grew up on Harry Potter, The Inheritance Cycle, Mistborn, and so many other series, and I'm sure many of you did as well. And that has made me the creative thinker that I am today. When I was first introduced to D&D, I was immediately enamored with how deep the lore went. It was a little overwhelming at times as a new player because I had been dropped into a new world that I knew absolutely nothing about. As an adult, that has grown up learning about the diversity of our world, Earth, from religion to creatures that live in the sea. What a strange feeling it is to enter an entirely different space with some similarities, but a lot of differences as well. After about 2 years of playing D&D, I decided that I wanted to give DMing a shot. I had always been creative and loved stories, and so I thought I could pretty easily create a killer campaign as long as I had a source book and a laptop for some quick searches. I rounded up some friends, made a foam core board for the map, and had my sister help me paint it. We made it look like it was cobblestone. It was beautiful. I bought some dice for my players, and I wrote a basic story taking place in the Sword Coast. Immediately, I realized that my lack of knowledge of the lore of the D&D universe was going to cause me some problems. My characters wanted answers about the gods, the demons, the diverse dimensions, and the creatures that they may encounter. They rolled really high on their history checks, and I didn't have all or even most of the answers. What I did have was a brain that could fire off nonsense and turn it into a plot that was passable. And this is how I got into world building, which is what I wanted to talk about today. So when I hear world building, I think of some of the greats, the Brandon Sandersons and Christopher Paolinis of the world. These authors and many others have created universes that are very unique and occasionally just as in-depth as the lore of Faerun and the other realms that are around. Those are some pretty big shoes to fill. Like I said before, during those first few sessions that I was DMing, I started realizing that every time my players asked a question, I had the option of just making something up, and they accepted it as if it was from a rule book or some sort of lore. And in essence, it was. I was creating that source book. I was creating lore without realizing it. I made sure to write things down as I imagined them, and later in the evening, after our session, when I was writing a recap, I had an explosion of ideas on how I could write these different elements into the deeper story and turn them into, powerful plot points. For example, I didn't know anything about the Pantheon in Faerun, and so when one of my players asked if they could say a prayer to a god they had worshipped in their childhood, I quickly made up a name for that god and, created that god's domain. And when they said their prayer, the god did not immediately answer, but later I wrote an entire story about why that particular god was invested in the plot that my level 1 characters were navigating. Later on, that god ended up refilling a charge on a magical item when the party was about to be destroyed by the big bad evil guy. So now that I've kind of shown you a little bit of what I've done with that, I have 3 tips for starting a homebrew campaign yourself. The first is, don't be afraid to make someone else's world your own. Imagination is what makes D&D feel so real. So don't be afraid to leave the DM handbook on your bookshelf and make something up. It doesn't matter how much you know as long as you write it down and revisit it. You can most likely make something work in the plot with some thought. Even if you realize later that you messed up, you can always retcon your next session or retcon minor details that may alter the outcome of that plot point. It will help you in multiple ways, as the more you do this, the better your storytelling will become, and the more you'll trust your gut when impromptu storytelling. So, before I talked about Brandon Sanderson and Mistborn, I have stolen a few elements from the Cosmere at large in my campaign that I DM for my siblings, and it's because he has such great ideas that I can twist it slightly, and these elements end up fitting perfectly in this new world that I'm creating. In my experience, good ideas always breed more good ideas, and so reading books from amazing authors is also bound to help your homebrew campaigns be some of the best ever played. The second tip is start in an isolated location. So have your characters play on an island town. Keeping the plot revolving around one location will allow you to flesh out finer details as your players slowly begin to explore the surroundings. Maybe the people of this town aren't very welcoming to newcomers, and so they aren't very forthcoming with information, which in turn makes it very difficult for your players to learn much about the world other than what you have already worked out or come up with in the moment, or what they have hashed out in their backstories. This gives them the freedom to be a part of that homebrew campaign and create some lore. So another idea could be that maybe there's just enough drama or action happening in the town that they don't feel the need to really dive deep into the things that are happening outside of the town's walls. So this scenario creates the perfect environment for you to experiment without needing to stray too far out of what you've already written down. Even if your players do have questions about external factors, it makes it much easier to create something on the fly when it won't immediately affect the characters. And the final tip, write the beginning of your campaign as if it's a story. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with railroading your players in the first few sessions to really start to hash out the plot. It is almost necessary on some level. It will also help you get comfortable in a world that is just as new to you as it is to your players. Even after the initial plot points have been played out, I still end up writing down multiple scenarios after each session so that I have, quote unquote, source material to draw from when my players inevitably decide to throw me for a loop. Some of you might be thinking, but how do I even get started on DMing, or more specifically, creating homebrew campaigns? The best way to get started is just to start. That's really what it comes down to. Hopefully you have some friends or family that you can round up to play test some of your ideas on and get live feedback based on how invested they are in your story. If you don't have friends or family that will play, then here's my shameless plug of the day. Join the guild. We have an awesome Discord community that you'll hear about at the end of this episode. And this community can help connect you with some like-minded people. But do whatever you have to do to get some people together and start playing. When you get in these uncomfortable situations, you either sink or swim. And if you start to sink, you always have source books or Google to help you get back on the surface and try again. So it's really not the end of the world, no matter what you do. Well, thank you. That is all I have for today. I'm excited to be a part of this podcast and host a lot more episodes in the future. So if you enjoyed this or you have any questions or comments, feel free to DM us at How to Be a Better DM on Instagram. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First, tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/subscribe/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, creating sarcasm, puns, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.